Those first 4 sessions look pretty fantastic. How were they? Great. And hey, what a community. We've grown a little, and we got a lot of new people to meet. So on that note, if everybody could take a minute and introduce yourself to the person sitting next to you. I'm serious. We got a lot of new people to welcome in to our community. Wonderful. This is good. You don't just have to do this when it's announced. I really recommend exchanging some cards when you walk out into the hallway. Because over the next 4 days, 1,400 of us are going to attend 106 sessions. There are going to be scores of offs. We are going to drink thousands of gallons of coffee, tens of thousands of pints of beer. As we work together as a community and learn from each other on how to build the next generation of communication tools. And what better way to kick that off than with Dries. It is a great honor to have Dries kick this off with the State of Drupal. Dries Bertard, please.
Hello everybody. It's this time of the year again, right? We do this roughly every 6 months. And I'm actually, when I was making my slides, I was thinking maybe I should change the formula a little bit because maybe it's a little bit repetitive. And I haven't done that in this presentation, but going forward, maybe I should do one presentation which is more about growth of Drupal and another presentation which is more technical. So for this keynote presentation, I'll be all over the map and I'll be touching on various aspects of Drupal. And I don't want to give away the spoiler, but I think the short version of this presentation is Drupal rocks. And I'll talk more about that in this presentation. Please remain seated for the entire performance. And the way I would like to present this, fact is, we'd like to talk a little bit more about what we have accomplished the last 8 years together, and also, how we have accomplished that, and where I think we are today, and where we are going, going forward. And so we'd like to kick this off with taking you back, for a little while into the history of Drupal, and to show you how everything got started. So this is me 10 years ago. I'm actually in my student dorm where I started work on Drupal. And so I left my parents' place at the age of 17, and I lived there for 4 years. And after a couple of years, I started Drupal. I think on this picture, I'm like 19 or 20 years old. And was sort of a self-respecting geek, right? My hair was slightly too long, probably. You can see the chessboard on my shelf. Next to the chessboard, I have some assembler books on how to program assembler, and below that, the white books are my compiler books, and above that is my collection of stamps. So how cool is that? And so around that time, I was actually involved with the Linux WLAN project, and I built this wireless network. I was also the maintainer of this FAQ, but I built a wireless network in my student dorm, and we connected a number of students. And so, once we built the network, I decided we would build a message board so we could actually use the network. And also, we'd use the message board to keep track of the status of the network, which of course didn't always work. But I had been involved with web development for several years, mostly working with CGI and server-side include, stuff like that. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about PHP and MySQL, because these were sort of the new kids on the block around that time. And so I did, and I created this message board. And about a year after, or maybe a little bit longer, I moved out from the student dorm because I graduated. And so I decided to move our message board to the public internet. And I wanted to register a domain name. First I wanted to register .up.org, which is the R and the O swap, but I made a typo when I registered, and I ended up with drop, which was an English word, which which I thought was worth some money and was fun, and I decided to use that instead. And so we talked about a bunch of things, as you can see, from politics to whatever, but slowly but certainly the tone of the website switched to more technology-related stuff, and we started talking about the future of the web. And I used this site to experiment with many of these new features. So this was in 1999 and 2000, and I would implement things like RSS feeds, content moderation, all of these things. And so as more people came to the site talking about the future of the web, they started giving me suggestions. And I said, you know what, maybe I should make this open source so you can actually implement your own suggestions instead of me having to do all the work. So, on January 15th, 2001, I actually did, and I released Drupal 1.0.0. And as you can see from the announcement, many of the things we have today, were actually part of the first version of Drupal, such as a modular design, PHP-based session handling, access control, and we had a public diary module. That was before actually blogs or weblogs were sort of mainstream, didn't really have that name yet. So, a bunch of stuff. And really, for the first 2 or 3 years, I spent a lot of time working on the technology, and that's one thing I did. And the other thing I did is, I reached out to people and I tried to, get them involved. So, I was selling Drupal, and so, one day, as I was involved with the Linux kernel stuff, for the wireless network stuff, I was reading Slashdot and also reading Kernel Trap, which was reporting about Linux stuff. And Jeremy's site, was getting Slashdot at every 2 weeks or so, and he was using PHP Nuke. And I sent him an email like, you should really use Drupal, because next time you get Slashdot, the site will be up. It wouldn't crash. So I sent him these emails, and we started communicating. Had to use some hardcore sales, as you can read. And he even offered, I gave him the user ID 1 password on my site, so he could actually log in and see what it looked like. I encouraged him to use the development version of Drupal, as you can see here. And ultimately, he decided to actually switch to Drupal, and it was a huge win for us, because it was a visible site, and we proved that Drupal could resist the Slashdot. I mean, it didn't resist the Slashdot the first time, but after a little bit of work, it actually did. That's how the throttle module actually came to existence, which was mostly written by Jeremy with some help from others. And so, I think this is a good example of how. Even today, I think we need to keep reaching out to people and selling Drupal. And it's not so much about how this changed Jeremy's life, because Jeremy now is making a full-time living with Drupal. That's all he does nowadays, and sailing. But I think the message is really that we need to continue to convince people to use Drupal, and maybe not just Drupal, but also your modules. So if you write modules, make sure to reach out to people and to educate them and to convince them, because that's how you make things happen. And as you can see, people buy a lot of stuff. They buy into it, whatever you tell them. And so that's what I did the first couple of years. And a highlight for me was in 2004. I was actually invited to present at a conference, an academic conference in Vancouver. That's the first time I got together with some Drupal people. And it was actually the very first time I gave a Drupal presentation. Also the very first time I I got a Drupal t-shirt, as you can see in this picture. And we had a few other people show up, like Neil Drum. I don't think he had a drinking age yet. You know, other people were Boris Mann and James Walker. And as you can see, you know, they all looked fairly young, no? And so, as I was making this presentation, I developed this theory. And this graph, I think, shows the average amount of facial hair over time in the Drupal community. Which is to say, I mean, a lot of us got involved very early on in the process and have stayed around. There is a little bit of a dip-off right now because as of a year or two, there's more business people involved, and they seem to cancel out some of the natural growth in terms of you know, facial hair development. And that is actually also what you can see on the next picture, which you know, shows a picture of the very first Drupal conference ever. And you know, a lot of these people on the slide are still you know, here today. So maybe the people that are on this picture, if they could stand up, would love to see how many. There's Robert. You know, so we have, it's hard to see from here, but you know, there's Chris Messina, who is there. John Van Dyke works for Lullabot now. You know, Stephen Wittens, I think this is James. Boris, you know, Neil, all of these people, they came out to Antwerp, which was, you know, pretty remarkable because, you know, I remember how we organized the conference. We just booked a small meeting room in a hotel and had probably room for 20 people. And we sold out at 20 people. And so we decided to book another room, and that sold out as well. And then actually we had to rent an additional suite so we could feed another 5 people in the hotel. So we ended up, like, I think with 45 people. And at the time, I thought it was amazing. You know, I couldn't believe it's that people would travel from all over the world, you know, 45 people to get together and talk about Drupal all day. And so, you know, that was for me, that was a highlight in the Drupal history. We also, you know, gave a lot of Drupal presentations. And here's Moshe talking about how to build a module, and as you can see, I was explaining the database API. Here's another picture. This is John Bob, or Jonathan Cheffer. He's no longer active in the community, but he's sort of the inventor of CCK. And so at DrupalCon Antwerp, we actually spend a lot of time talking about storage models for CCK and you know, how that impacts performance. And as it turns out, we still do that today, which was, you know, which is interesting, right? Here's another person I met. Another person I met, you know, at Drupal Camp Antwerp, and you know, he used to be a professional musician. And so I remember walking to lunch with him, and he was talking, you know, he was telling me that he was frustrated with his day job. So he, you know, he had left his musical career to be a software developer, and he was writing Java code, and he was frustrated with the Java code. And he was telling me how he would like to do full-time Drupal. And we sort of talked each other into the fact that we needed to have a Drupal book. And so, you know, that person is Robert Douglas. And so he actually wrote the very first Drupal book. And this picture, by the way, also proves my facial hair theory. I think he lost some hair since. But anyway, he wrote the very first Drupal book, and it was a big thing for us because, you know, now you have a, you know, once we had a book, people started to take us serious, right? It's sort of this important milestone. Sorry. And so ever since, you know, a lot of books have been written about Drupal, and actually, just the last year, more than 10 books have been written about Drupal. And so I told you in the beginning of this presentation that Drupal was doing great, and I think, you know, this is one of the examples that shows how well Drupal is doing. And, you know, just imagine what the effect is of these books on people and how many people it, you know, adds to our community. So I think that's great. So let's go back for a moment to this particular slide. You know, so we started to talk a lot about Drupal on drop.org, and not everybody wanted to talk about Drupal all day. So they started to say, maybe you should have your own domain, d.o, and start talking about Drupal there. And so we did. And that's actually how it looked like initially, which clearly was a really bad idea. And it might have set the wrong tone for designers in our community. But about a year after, it started to look like this, which was already much nicer. And actually, I think around 2004 or 2005, it started to look like this, which is still how we know it today. And so at DrupalCon Sunnyvale, I put up this picture for the first time about how our home, our website, the place where we live, frankly, and where we work together and collaborate was pretty much in a poor state, and how we needed to change that. And ever since, I think we started to make improvements to that. And in fact, the Drupal Association last year made the redesign of d.o one of its top priorities, and we hired Mark Bolton to help us redesign our house. And Mark will actually talk about that at this conference as well. And so Mark did the redesign, and then I helped organize a number of sprints to actually implement these redesigns. First, we got together in Cologne, Germany, where we talked a little bit about how we should be doing this. Then we got together in Cambridge, where we focused primarily on upgrading the site from D5 to D6 without implementing the new design stuff. And then we got together in Paris 2 weeks ago for a week, where we actually started the implementation of the new design. And so in the next slide, I would like to show you what we have accomplished so far. It's not done yet, and we'll need more work to do, but I think we're going to open up this site today, which is our testing site, where you can see the new design in action. So we implemented a theme, and as you can see, it's actually working, mostly. There's still some dummy content and stuff I should walk over. So you can see the commits. A lot of people worked really hard on this for a long time, so it's sort of working. So we actually are able to search. We integrated Solar in the website, so we can implement some of the design concepts. So you can see some of the faceted navigation on the site there. You can also refine your search in the from there. So that's the facets. Thank you. So you can actually log into it as well. That's what I was thinking. And then we also added this new thing, which is called the dashboard. So the main front page is sort of more marketing-ish, if you will. It's focused towards explaining what Drupal is. And so we created a dashboard for people that are familiar with Drupal and that want to use the website as a tool to do development and stuff. So they can, there will be various blocks. People can move them around using drag and drop. So these will have like commit messages and whatever you want. So we're actually thinking about integrating with Open Social so that everybody can expose new functionality and then make that available to d.o. Another cool feature is people can create new tabs to organize things the way they want to. And then reorganize the tabs. Stuff like that. So there is more work to do. There is a bunch of stuff like there is a marketplace and stuff, and we still need to develop that. So we'll be working on this the last day of the conference at the Code Sprint. So if you want to get involved and want to help, please come to us and maybe go to Gabor. He's sort of, been involved in charge for a lot of the technical direction. So, you know, made a lot of good progress there, and I hope we'll be able to launch the new website relatively soon. And I think it's going to be a really big thing for the Drupal community because it's, you know, it's going to really help us in terms of marketing. Another site I wanted to talk about real quick is Drupal.com. You know, it's I own the site, and so far I've not done anything with it. And so, you know, this is what it looks like today. And it has the PS for many, many months, I think even many years. And actually it doesn't get a lot of traffic, the site, but it could be something really useful. So I reached out to the development seat guys and asked them maybe they could come up with a better landing page. And they actually did. And you know, they designed it to look like this, which I think it's really wonderful. And so I'll probably going to put it up in the next couple of weeks. And at the top it has a couple of things like what is Drupal, who is Drupal, and if you zoom in a little, like it has all of these pictures which are rotating. You know, it has others, and we'll add more. Here's another one. And so this is just the who is Drupal, but there is also what is Drupal and where is Drupal, which has similar fun stuff. And basically, if I flip back, it has various links back to D.O, like groups.d.o and Planet and D.O itself. I was also thinking about putting up some ads to help me pay for the trademark costs that I'm having, which is turning out to be really expensive. Already this year I spent more than 5,000 euros on trademarks, and it's getting painful to keep paying for that. So I hope to be able to cover some trademark costs there. So I think that's also going to help with our marketing and drive more people to Drupal. So, all right. Something else I wanted to talk about is in 2005, we had a big server meltdown, and up to that point, D.O was hosted on a shared machine. So on the machine was my personal site, a bunch of other people's site, as well as D.O. And Drupal started to grow that big that it was very hard to keep up with the performance. We spent a lot of time tuning the site, but one day actually the server just died. I think it melted physically, and so I was pretty. I didn't know what to do, so I decided to just put up a PayPal button. And, because we had budgeted that we needed to raise like 3,000 euros to buy like this amazing new server, which would help us like scale through, forever. And so, but the amazing thing what happened is that within a day or so, we actually raised $10,000 from people all over the world. And I was completely shocked. I couldn't believe that, and actually started to panic, like, oh my God. All this money is going to my personal bank account? And so I changed my PayPal password to be like 32 characters and stuff. Like, I've never had that much money. And then actually the OSL, the open source labs, they reached out to me and they said, well, if you want, we can also host the stuff for free. All you have to do is give us the servers, which was amazing. And if that wasn't enough, one of the CTOs of Sun actually called me up on the phone and said, hey, we can send you a machine. When it was like an $8,000 machine. I was like, what the hell is happening? And actually, the next day, the machine showed up at the OSL, so it was shipped like in less than 12 hours, I think. So that was pretty crazy. And we got coverage on Slashdot and everything. But I think that was one of the first great signs about what a remarkable community that was slowly growing. And so we made this little poster to give a thank you message to everybody that donated money. And so it actually has all the names of the people that gave money. And so, yeah, it was, I think, an important milestone as well, at least from my point of view. And so moving forward, so, all of this stuff happened, right? We had DrupalCon Antwerp, which was successful, and we managed to raise this amount of money. So we felt a little brave, and we decided to organize the next conference in OSCON Portland, co-located with OSCON actually. And so we made these T-shirts. We felt worthy. And we actually were selling them for 20 bucks a piece because we weren't charging for the conference. And we were also given a booth at OSCON. We had this little booth in the, far in the corner. And the amazing thing which happened again was that all of the other booths, people would just, go and watch at the booth and, say hi and then move on. But our booths sort of seemed to attract people, and people were camping out. And so we had a floor full of people, with their laptops open and talking about Drupal all day, which was pretty nice to see. Also at the same conference, Kieran and Boris, we, actually as we were sitting on that sofa when that picture was taken, we started talking about the need for having a Drupal association, a non-profit organization to take money because, I was still shocked by the fact that I got that much money in my bank account. So we should have another checking account for that. And similarly, like organizing these conferences costs money, and we figured, it's not normal that somebody has to, actually, pay the $6,000 or the $10,000 to organize a conference, and then, hope that they would get the money back. And so that's where we, planted the seeds for creating a Drupal association, which, we later did. Our conferences weren't always that big, so here's an example of a booth at FOSDEM, basically one sheet of paper in 2006. And some stickers. But the conferences kept growing. So in Brussels, this one is, I helped co-organize this. We had 150 people. 6 months later at Yahoo, we had 300 people show up. And around that time, another important milestone, at least from my point of view, is the Lullabot podcast. I think they did. You want to sing? I think they did an amazing job, marketing Drupal. I think that was very important that that happened, and still today it's very valuable. And so a year after Yahoo, we went from 300 people to 900 people, and today actually we're 1,400 people, and I'm told there's hundreds of people in waiting lists. I'm even told, and I don't know if this is true, that people are organizing unconferences outside of the venue, like Drupal people that couldn't get in, organizing their own stuff, and then trying to catch up with us in the evenings. So, again, we doubled in size in just a year. And not just the conferences, but also the events. So this is a snapshot of all of the events happening in March. As you can see, events happening all over the world pretty much every day, often 2 events a day, or sometimes 3 events a day. And if you look at the history of Drupal, that growth has pretty much been a fact. So every year or every major Drupal release, we seem to have doubled in size in pretty much every metric, in terms of downloads, in terms of people to the websites, in terms of comments and notes on the websites and stuff like that. And I'm happy to announce that we did it again. So if you look at the core downloads, they doubled from 100K downloads last year to 200K downloads a month right now, and even more than that. Last year we had 2,000 contributed projects, so we more than doubled the number of projects, and we almost doubled the number of visitors that we have on our website. So we're at 1.5 million unique visitors a month. And I think we're doing, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think, if you all know the Drupal website, it's mostly forums and discussion. It's a lot of text and actually very few images, and I think we do like 3 terabytes of data transfer, just text. So yeah, Drupal growth is strong. And so, this is an amazing phenomenon, right? I mean, we're hundreds of thousands of websites. We're thousands of developers all over the world. We have more than 4,000 extensions, and we manage to double ourselves every year. And we work 24/7, like, whether it's Monday, whether it's Sunday or Saturday, Drupal people are always working. We always make progress. A lot of us do it for the love of it. We work on Drupal because it matters to us, and we actually give it away for free, so other people can benefit from that as well, which is, I think, truly remarkable. And a lot of people that I talk to, they're completely amazed by that very fact. And I bet, some of you might still be amazed by that, or many of you, were amazed by that at some point. But look at it. I mean, we're just a loosely organized group of people. Isn't it amazing that we get anything done at all? And that we make the progress that we need to make? To me, it's pretty amazing. And, Drupal contributors are not superheroes. We're just regular people. Some of us are code monkeys. I like to write a lot of code. Some of us fell asleep coding at conferences. Some of us knit Drupal socks, and others of us actually wear them. Some of us wear funny Drupal shirts. This is a modified DrupalCon, but then with WordPress stickers on the eyes. Some of us... So that's actually a Drupal sticker right there. And I have something to say about this picture. Actually, I showed this picture in another presentation I gave, and a day after, a guy mailed me, I don't know his name, but let's say his name was Tim, and he said, "Hey, I'm Tim, and this is my friend John, riding on the bike." Just as to give you an idea of how open the Drupal community is. And then even funnier is that the day after, actually John sent me an email. Like, "Hey, that's me on the bike." So, some of us eat, Drupal noobs. Some of us are virtual. For many years now, we drag this cardboard around. This is actually Morbus, who lives on IRC and in the issue queue, but he doesn't like to come to Drupal conferences, so people will carry him around and put him in a chair and stuff. Some of us make crazy stuff like a Drupal bacon. Some of us are 12 years old and write better code than 95% of you guys. Some of us make Drupal eggs. Many of us kill kittens. Some of us are quite hot, I must say. We make pumpkins, we make our own beer, we make cookies, and some of us try to make cakes. But probably shouldn't. But it's no surprise to me that so many people are amazed. But the beautiful thing is that Drupal is built by everyone, it's controlled by nobody, and somehow it magically works. I was thinking about this, and in a way it's very much like the internet itself, right? It's not owned by anyone. It's always a little bit broken, just like Drupal. But if you look at it from a distance, it actually works, and it's actually pretty reliable. It's never been down as a whole. I mean, the internet is probably the most reliable system that we ever made. And I think the same is true for Drupal, and it can actually work. And I was never actually able to articulate why it worked until I read this, which was said by Clay Shirky, which is that replace planning with coordination. And I think that's one of the key reasons for success in the Drupal world. And he gave the example of a cell phone. Like before, people had cell phones and they wanted to meet and get together, they had to do planning. They had to, we'll meet there at this time, and if you're not there, we'll go there, and they had backup plans and stuff. But with a cell phone, you can just, you arrive and you give people a call and I'm here, where are you? And things flow a lot easier. And I think that's also what is happening in open source, and that's why Drupal is successful, because we have this kind of coordination built into D.O and into our systems, and we don't have to rely on a lot of planning. And so I always felt this, and I never believed in formal roadmaps. I never believed in creating hierarchies of people, like creating institutions or formal structures, and I also never believed that the Drupal Association should be in control of the Drupal roadmap or the technical direction of the project. And it's all about letting people self-organize and let them solve problems when they actually emerge. And that's one of the things which sets us apart from many companies, because they don't have the luxury to actually do this. They have to do planning because they have so many expenses They have to hire people, they have to pay for these people, and they can't just let them coordinate stuff. If there is a guy that contributes one change a year, he would get fired, right? And so, if you look at things from, that's one of the things which is different in companies and open source is that we have a long tail of contributions, whereas companies probably have the green stuff but not the yellow stuff. And so there's two ways to look at this graph. I mean, you've all seen these graphs. I mean, either you can say that most people do most of the work, or you can actually say, or a few people do actually most of the work, or you can see that a lot of people do actually a lot of the work as well. And so if we want to grow Drupal, we have to think about how do we grow Drupal in the context of this very graph. So we could say more people need to work on Drupal full time, which would grow, would raise the curve on the right-hand side. But people are limited, physically limited by how much work they can do on a given day. So, it's still something we can do, attract more people to work full-time on Drupal. But another way to grow the Drupal community is to stretch out the tail and to invite many more people that do small things. But, the collection of all the small things actually adds up significantly. That's why I think we need to, in relation to my previous slide, we need to think hard about how we avoid creating institutions, how we avoid doing planning. And so whenever we do planning, we have to think if we could potentially change a few things to avoid doing the planning. And we're not perfect at that yet. I mean, if you look at how we had to do the D.O redesign, we had to do planning. We had to organize the sprints to pull them off. And sometimes that's the right thing to do, but I think every time we have to think about how we can try and avoid doing the planning. So that's something we need to get better at. Right, let's go back to the history for a moment and then break out again. So this is what the Drupal admin UI looked like in 2002. As you can see, I was really not a designer. But basically we had no menu. We had no breadcrumbs. There's actually a secondary menu, so you can see. There was no help text, there was nothing. So a year after, we actually decided to make some drastic usability improvements, which we did. We added a menu system, we added context-sensitive help, we added breadcrumbs and everything, and even later in 2003, we actually integrated the backend and the front end, so people could switch their menus around and stuff, which you can see here. 2004, we worked also on usability improvements a lot, but not so much structural, so not much you can see there. Drupal 5, we did do a new team, but one of the things I think was important for Drupal 5 was the fact that we shipped with an installer, so people didn't have to modify PHP files to get Drupal working, and also people didn't have to, we do have like requirements checking instead of just white screening or whatever, and so became a lot more robust, made it easier for people to get started with Drupal. In Drupal 6, again, we did a bunch of usability improvements, but we actually made the installer look nicer, which I think was a big deal. So the question, of course, is, for every major release, we've made big improvements, or at least significant usability improvements and feature improvements. And what are these things going to be in Drupal 7? And so I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about Drupal 7. And first of all, I would like to talk a little bit about where we are. And this is roughly where we are. So we opened development for Drupal 7 in February 2008, so that's like a year ago. Right now we are pretty much there, DrupalCon DC, and I've decided that we're going to freeze the code for Drupal 7 on September 1st, which doesn't mean Drupal will be released that date. It will actually be released when it's ready, but it means we have roughly 6 months left, or that we have done 2/3 of the development of Drupal 7. And I picked this date based on conversations with many people in the community, by listening to to users by looking at download statistics and other metrics. And I think Drupal 6 has finally taken off now. And I think if we have another 6 months of development, I think we can create a really nice release. So when it's ready, I knew the question was going to come up. So it's ready when there's no critical issues left, essentially. So we'll freeze September 1, and then we'll work towards fixing all of the critical issues, and it's ready when this number becomes 0. Hopefully that will happen pretty soon after. And so a lot of work has been done in Drupal 7. Actually, we had more than 300 people make contributions so far, and more than 1,000 patches landed. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and I can't possibly talk about all of that, so I'll just focus on a few highlights of what I think are the highlights. And then if you want to learn more, you should go to Webchick's presentation, because she'll be talking for 1 hour about Drupal 7 and stuff we did. All right, so let's talk a little bit about usability first. It's a topic that I've been talking about for many years now at every conference, and I still think it's really important that we treat usability, that we properly treat usability, because when talking to people, and if you follow Twitter and stuff, there's a lot of people frustrated with Drupal's usability, and there's more work that we need to do. And so a couple of things that we did, we actually did a bunch of things, but one of the things we did, actually, did I skip a slide? No, a slide disappeared. So we added install profiles to Drupal 7, and we're shipping with 2. One is the minimal install profile, which is what Drupal 6 is like. So if you install Drupal, it's basically empty. And then we have a default Drupal install profile, which comes with some dummy data. Like we create a taxonomy and some terms and stuff just to get people going and to show them what things are like. We did some things in the permissions stuff, so we have better descriptions and some help text for permissions, and we did a whole bunch of things. But all of these things are really good, but frankly, they're not good enough. If we want to succeed, we need to make bigger steps forward. And so a couple of things are exciting, in that regard. First of all, a Drupal usability team emerged, and I think it started to emerge in the DrupalCon Szeged, roughly 6 months ago. And ever since, these people have been active in the issue queues, and they've been reviewing patches and giving advice. And they also went out to Baltimore last week to do formal usability testing of Drupal 7. I haven't seen the results yet, but I'm really looking forward to learning more about what they discovered. And they'll also have a presentation about that this week. The other thing which I'm really excited about is the fact that Acquia decided to hire Mark Bolton to help us with Drupal 7 usability. And even though Acquia hired them, the Drupal community is truly the client. I mean, there's no agenda. And so Mark will be working with the, within the Drupal community and with the usability team to, what I hope make some more drastic improvements. And he will do that the same way like he did for the D.O redesign. And so they're starting the work this week while in DC, and so they're organizing a few things like a blue sky design workshop where everybody can go to and then sort of dream up ideas of how they would like to see things improved. And they're also doing a Pimp My Admin stuff where people can go to them and show them how they customize the admin UI. If there's things you do for every site or something, go and show them. They have a little booth in the booth area, and you should definitely talk to them. And so, it's not an easy task to to make these kind of big changes, but I hope we're all supportive of them. Something else which I think is going to be very important is that in Drupal 7 we now have a better file API. We started to treat files as first-class citizens, meaning we have APIs, like a file load, file save, file validate, as well as hooks that other modules can listen to whenever a file changes. And that allows us actually to make a lot of improvements to the way we handle files, and hopefully that will allow us to make some progress there. Another big thing which happened, and there will also be a dedicated presentation to this, is fields in core, or CCK in core. So this is what CCK... Thank you. It's work of many people. But this is what CCK looks like today, right? So we have a Node API in core, we have custom content types, or CCK in contrib. So one of the things we did in Drupal 7, we actually created a fields API, and we moved that to core, which allowed us then to sort of reduce the amount of code in contrib to just the UI parts. So that became a lot smaller, and we're talking about moving the UI to core as well, but as a first step, we just did the fields API. We also moved a number of the helper modules, like node reference and user reference and all of these things. We also moved them to core. And one of the exciting things we did is not only can fields be applied to nodes, but they can also be applied to other objects, like, for example, users. And that actually, creates a lot of cool things. And here is a screenshot taken from the write-up that Barry and the rest of the team did. But here you can see the user settings, and we added a field called favorite saying. And then on the screenshot in the bottom, you can actually see the user profile page where the field shows up. And so the interesting thing, of course, is what does that mean for a profile module? So profile module is still there in core, but we can now actually start thinking about taking it out. The biggest thing that needs to be done there is probably writing a migration path. I don't think anyone is working on that. But it's not just the profile module. It actually creates sort of this come to Jesus moment about how we store things in Drupal. Because, for example, user avatars, maybe that should be a field as well, so it can be applied to both nodes and users. Taxonomy, wouldn't it be nice if you could classify users and other things in the system as well? People even suggest that the poll module should become a field, so you can attach a poll to everything, to a review, to an article, to anything. And so, none of the above has happened yet, but it's one of the things which I think that will keep us busy for the next couple of years. And hopefully a lot of that stuff we'll be able to work on the next 6 months or so. But we definitely need more people to help with that. One of the things about fields API is a storage model. And we're still working on that. We have to make trade-offs between simplicity of the codes, performance, and ease of data migration. So there's a lot of trade-offs to be made, but we're having a lot of discussions about that. But the exciting thing to me is that we'll actually be able to have different storage models that we can plug in into the system, which is the big thing, right? It's like, think about MySQL. They have MyISM, they have InnoDB, and this is actually very similar to what MySQL does. So we can have customized storage engines that are good or better or worse at solving certain problems, and we let the user optimize for that. Something else I wanted to touch upon briefly is testing. So early in the Drupal 7 release cycle, actually one of the first big things we did is we added tests to Drupal 7. And here is a screenshot of what it looks like. And as you can see on the screenshot, more than 7,000 tests pass here, and the tests are 80% complete. So roughly we have, like 10,000 tests. Yeah, that's a lot. So we're actually, one of the things the Drupal community is really good at is, I think, is at applying patterns. If you teach one person how to write a test, all of a sudden you'll find, dozens and dozens of people writing tests. It's something which, works really well, I think, in open source. And so we have about 10,000 tests. We cover, actually, our tests cover more than 75% of all the code in Drupal, and that's actually an underestimation for a number of reasons. For example, there's API documentation right now in Drupal 7, which has the PHP extension. And so we're not counting that properly. The Postgres database backend is not being tested because our test setup doesn't support testing Postgres right now when we do these experiments, but it will actually work when you do the tests. And some of these is legitimate in the sense, for example, the OpenID module has no tests. So there's definitely more tests to be written, but already we have good coverage. And of the files that we are testing, we have roughly 80% test coverage, which I think is pretty good. It doesn't speak to the quality of the tests, of course, but it gives you some kind of indication of how many testing we have done. And the awesome part, of course, is that all of these tests currently pass, and that we really have adopted a test-driven development model for core. All right. Something else which already landed in Drupal 7 was a better database abstraction layer. Lots of new features there. Most of the work was being done by Larry Garfield with help from Chix and Damien, I believe. And so, master-slave replication, support for transactions. We're also able to take advantage of database-specific features right now, such as multi-insert queries in MySQL, but also delayed insert queries. And we abstracted that through the APIs. Much better portability, so we actually do have a SQLite support now. Postgres support is probably in better shape than it has ever been, and we're still in development. And the best of all, it comes with a lot of functional tests, and so it should be pretty easy to write backends for, say, Oracle or other database engines, which I think is great. So that's sort of the stuff which landed. And I would also like to talk a little bit more about some of the features that I would like to see happen in core. And this is just my personal opinion, but this is a list of them, and I don't need to explain them here. I think I could, but but the point is that I think there's a case to be made that these features belong in core, because I think every modern infrastructure, every modern architecture is slowly evolving to having all of these. And it's very hard to make that case in the issue queue. I mean, can you imagine? I would spend 3 weeks writing comments, trying to make the case, and then nobody would listen to it. So I'll try to make the case here. And so, back in the days when I was working on drop.org, I enjoyed thinking about the future of the web, and I still do today. And so, the web isn't all that old yet. It's only, 30 years old or something. And, actually a lot of the cool stuff happened the last 10 years ago. I mean, if people would have asked you if Wikipedia was possible 5 years ago or 10 years ago, most people would probably have told you you're crazy. It's impossible that an encyclopedia could possibly emerge on the web. And so, with these things in mind, can you even imagine what the web will look like 20 years from now? I sometimes wonder about that, and I think it looks pretty much like this. And I think people have to start thinking of the internet as one machine, one big system. Today people think of it as a collection of different machines and a collection of websites that are mostly independent, but I think that will slowly go away, and everything will be connected, and all of our devices, our computers, our cell phones will be views into that one machine. And I think you see that happening today with things like Google Apps. We're doing these things online. Cloud computing is another example, I think, which demonstrates this bigger trend, and even things like voice over IP. I mean, we're attaching our cell phones, our phones to this machine, and routing everything through the internet. And as I talked about earlier, it's actually a pretty damn reliable system. Whenever there's a problem, we route around it. It's never been down the last, X many of years. And so there's many great technologies that could also hook into this, like photosynth, Imagen, photosynth plugging into this real-time one machine and being able to render real-life views of everything on the planet. So in my view of the world, it's just too cool not to happen. So I think it will happen. And if you start thinking about the internet as one big machine, I think these technologies are starting to make a lot of sense. And so there's another way to look at this, right? So initially we started linking machines in the early days of the internet. And after that we started linking pages. And that's where Google made all of their money. You know, they were the masters of linking pages. And I think today there's clearly a trend towards linking data. And you know, remember the presentation I gave last year where I talked about RDFA and you know how different data sources can be combined on the fly to create new applications. I think you know that's exactly what I'm talking about. And again, if you think about this from the perspective of the internet being one machine, then it's crazy that you have to enter your list of friends on every site you visit. If the internet was one machine, just like on your computer, you don't have 12 address books, you have one, right? And so, you know, sharing data and data portability and interoperability are going to be, you know, become more and more important. And then the next steps is, you know, linking different things, which is, you know, people talk about the Internet of Things, which is where, you know, you'll be able to search your fridge for what stuff is still in your fridge and stuff like that. So, you know, as we move from data to actually physical objects, that I think will be the next step. And a lot of people talked about this. You know, Kevin Kelly calls this the one machine. Tim Berners-Lee calls this the giant global graph. And he says, he predicts that we're going to go from the www to the, you know, the giant global graph. That's, you know, we're going to link data, not pages. And others call this Web 3.0 and so forth. So with that picture in mind, you know, if that's where the internet is going, I think these technologies make a lot of sense. And I would like to see us be in the forefront of that by putting some more of that stuff into Drupal and looking for volunteers. All right, so last part of my presentation. So honestly, I think Drupal is a movement. I mean, you can see that here today with so many people. And movements need a mission. They need something they can rally around. And I think we actually have many missions. Like, at least for me, the short-term mission is to make a killer Drupal 7 release. Our medium-term you know, mission, I think, is to make it very easy for people to use Drupal and to really work hard on usability and to get more people onto Drupal. You know, so they can build any website they want at any time without any restrictions, and to make it a great developer platform and to make it actually easy to use for end users. And then I think our long-term mission is what we just talked about. You know, I think it's you know, helping to transform the web. And I think if we do this well, we can be a footnote in the history of the web. You know, we have the distribution, we have the platform to help bootstrap some of these technologies. You know, they're ambitious goals, but I think we can pull them off. And, you know, to make this happen, we don't actually need technical authority. I think what we need, you know, is people, and let these people coordinate. Not let them plan, but let them coordinate and rally around problems and let them solve them. And so movements happen because people coordinate and work together alongside of each other, not because somebody tells them, you know, you should be doing this and this. You know, especially people that are passionate, many people, you know, like you guys here, and that work on Drupal for the love of it. I also think a movement needs a healthy ecosystem, because companies give us the muscles, you know, to tackle some really hard problems. You know, as we have shown, I think we did, you know, the redesign and other sprints. So yeah, I mean, we need to create a healthy environment to create more companies and more bigger companies. To make, you know, code sprints possible, but also to make these conferences possible, frankly. So, you know, let's keep that in mind. But most of all, I think Drupal needs, you know, many leaders. And most people in the world are not leaders, they're lurkers. They're just watching to see what's happening. Most people are afraid to make changes. They're afraid to contribute to Drupal. And so, frankly, most people don't matter so much for us, right? But you're not most people. You know, Drupal has thousands of contributors, and most people in this room have learned how to make contributions to Drupal. And you know, you're leaders, I think, because you've overcome a lot of these obstacles, and you know, you didn't ask what you should be doing to help advance Drupal. You just did, and you know, you asked for feedback after, which I think is a good sign of leadership. And so Drupal is actually 1,000 little movements, each led by every single individual of you, and you know, all of us together create a bigger movement, and that's how we help each other. I think you know, that's how we democratize online publishing. That's frankly how we are changing our industry, and that's also, I think, we can help change the world. So, thank you. Thank you. I have one more thing. I'm happy to answer some questions after, but there is one more thing and I would like to give the word to, the name escapes me, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dries.
You're welcome.
Great presentation. It's hard to go after him, especially with the great presentation. Some of you know me, most of you don't. My name is Jose Zamora. I'm glad to be here. It's amazing to be in this room full of positive energy. I work at Knight Foundation, and we are glad to be part of this movement. Just give me 1 second. We are really happy to be here, and we are happy to share your mission and to be part of your mission. So let me just.
Need help?
Yeah. Sorry.
I think it's...
Oh, there it is.
All right. Oh. Try.
You for your help in finding the best Drupal projects to speed media innovation. And that is how the Knight Drupal initiative was born. You, the Drupal community, established an open and public application process. You solicited, reviewed, rated, and recommended your top choices. Together, we selected the 6 projects we thought would have the most impact, the greatest impact. The goal of the contest was to enable more people to enter the digital conversation by lowering the technical barriers to entry, provide powerful tools for digital publication, free and open to all, and encourage people to improve their communities by supporting the free exchange of information and ideas. The Knight Drupal initiative is happy to announce, and what better place to do this than at DrupalCon Boston, the biggest Drupal conference until now. We hope next year it's even bigger, that the Knight Drupal initiative winners will receive a total of $485,380. And the winners are Adi Berry. Adi, can you stand up? Adi will create a clear, concise, up-to-date instructions for Drupal and will set a standardized process to run documentation sprints. Bill Fitzgerald. Is Bill here today? I hope he was here, but if not, I hope he hears this applause, and he will be creating a free publishing system that makes it easier for multiple geographic communities to share local news and information with one another. Dave Cohen. Dave will allow anyone, anywhere to easily create a one-click Drupal online news site and then allow those sites to be integrated into Facebook for publishing and distribution. Nick Vidal. Nick Vidal is from Brazil, and he will be developing a software that allows individuals to create and share personalized stream of information within their social network, helping them to filter, distribute, and recommend news and information to others interested in the same issue. Rob Loach. Rob will create an addition to Drupal that will allow anyone to add microblogging functionality to a personal Drupal website, and to allow the growing number of individuals and organizations using microblogging to receive and distribute notices across different websites and microblogging services. Development seed. Development Seed will be creating an open source digital information tools that will help citizens better communicate and understand the news and information about their community. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for being engaged in the Drupal community and for being focused on making Drupal's free and open source software open and available to all. And thank you for helping us lower the barriers to online publishing and for speeding media innovation. As Dries said today, Drupal rocks. And the Night Drupal initiative rocks. And the main reason, you. Thank you.